The job posting had said minimal interaction and overnight premium, which was exactly what I needed. 3 nights a week, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., walking the floors of a distribution warehouse in an industrial park outside Tacoma. $12 an hour plus differential. I'd been out of work for 4 months, my unemployment running out. So when they offered me the position after a 15-minute phone interview, I took it. My name is Marcus Webb, and I'd done security work before. Retail stores, apartment complexes, nothing exciting. The manager who hired me, a woman named Patricia, explained the basics over the phone. The warehouse stored restaurant equipment and supplies for a regional distributor. My job was to walk the building every 2 hours, check the doors, make sure nothing looked disturbed, and log it in the system. Simple. She told me I'd be meeting the previous night guard on my first shift. He'd show me the route and the procedures, then I'd be on my own. I arrived at 9:45 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October. The warehouse sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, surrounded by 3 other industrial buildings, all of them dark. The parking lot had maybe a dozen cars scattered near the entrances of the other facilities, probably people working late shifts or cleaning crews. The warehouse itself was a massive concrete rectangle, maybe 200,000 square feet, with a small office section attached to the front and loading docks along the back. The previous guard's car was parked near the entrance, a beige Camry with a dent in the rear bumper and an expired parking permit hanging from the rearview mirror. I parked next to it and walked to the front door. It was locked. I tried the handle twice, then knocked. No response. I could see lights on inside the office area, fluorescent panels casting that greenish institutional glow, but I didn't see anyone moving. I knocked again, harder. The door opened 6 inches, held by a security chain. A man's face appeared in the gap. Late 50s, heavy set, with gray stubble and dark circles under his eyes that looked permanent. "You Marcus?" he asked. "Yeah." "Derek, hold on." He closed the door. I heard the chain rattle, then the door opened fully. Derek stood there in a wrinkled security uniform that was too tight across the stomach. He looked me up and down with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between pity and relief. "Come on," he said. "Not much time to show you everything." The office section was small, just a reception desk, a break room, and a security station with a desk, a computer, and a wall of monitors showing camera feeds from around the warehouse. Everything smelled like old coffee and the kind of industrial cleaner that doesn't quite mask the smell of mildew. Derek walked me through the computer system, showing me how to log the patrol times and write incident reports. His hands shook slightly as he typed, and he kept glancing at the monitors. "Camera system's pretty basic," he said. 12 cameras total, 4 on the perimeter, 8 inside. They record, but the feeds are choppy. Sometimes they freeze for a few seconds, then catch up. I'd supposed to fix it, but... He shrugged. "Got it," I said. He pulled out a ring of keys and a heavy Maglite flashlight from the desk drawer. "You'll need these. 2-hour patrols, 10 p.m., midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. Walk the whole building, check all the exterior doors, look for anything unusual, write it down. Even if nothing happens, write down that nothing happened." "Anything I should know about?" I asked. "Problems with break-ins, vandalism?" Derek was quiet for a moment. He looked at the monitors again, his jaw working like he was chewing on something. "People come around sometimes," he said finally. "Homeless, mostly. They try the doors, look for a place to sleep. Just make noise, they'll leave. Has anyone gotten inside?" "Not while I've been here." He paused. "But the building's old. Lots of doors, lots of ways in if someone really wanted." He showed me the patrol route on a hand-drawn map, a circuit that went through the main warehouse floor, through the smaller storage annexes on the east and west sides, past the loading docks and back to the office. The whole loop took about 40 minutes if you walked at a normal pace. "Questions?" Derek asked. "Why are you leaving?" I asked. "If you don't mind me asking." His expression hardened. "Got a day job lined up. Better pay, better hours." It was a lie. I could tell from the way he said it, too quickly, too rehearsed, but I didn't push. "One more thing," he said. He was putting on his jacket, moving toward the door like he couldn't wait to leave. "If you hear anything weird, voices, footsteps, whatever, don't investigate right away. Watch the cameras first. Most of the time it's just the building settling, or the HVAC. Old buildings make noise. And if it's not, then you call the cops and wait outside. You're not getting paid enough to be a hero. He left at 10:05, and I watched his Camry pull out of the parking lot faster than seemed necessary. Then I was alone. The first patrol went fine. The warehouse floor was enormous, lined with industrial shelving units stacked 20 feet high with commercial kitchen equipment, ovens, refrigerators, prep tables, all of it shrink-wrapped and labeled. The overhead lights were motion-activated, clicking on as I walked beneath them and shutting off 30 seconds after I passed. Behind me, sections of the warehouse fell back into darkness. I checked all the doors, locked, no signs of tampering. I logged it in the system at 10:47 and settled in at the security desk to wait for the midnight patrol. The monitors showed empty warehouse aisles, the loading docks, the parking lot, everything still. I found a coffee maker in the break room and started a pot, then sat scrolling through my phone. No cell service inside the building. The concrete walls were too thick, but the office had Wi-Fi. At 11:30, one of the monitors flickered and went black. I looked up. Camera 7, one of the interior cameras covering the West Annex, showed nothing but a blue screen with no signal in white letters. I watched it for a minute, waiting for it to reset like Derek had said it would. It stayed black. I checked the computer. The camera was still listed as active in the system. I tried refreshing the feed. Nothing. Probably just the glitch Derek had mentioned. I made a note in the log and went back. I heard a sound. It came from somewhere deep in the warehouse, a metallic bang like something heavy falling. I froze, listening. The sound didn't repeat. I looked at the monitors. Nothing moved on any of the feeds. I picked up the flashlight and the keys and walked to the door leading into the warehouse. Through the small window, I could see the nearest aisle, dark except for the emergency exit signs glowing red in the distance. I opened the door. The motion lights clicked on, flooding the immediate area with harsh fluorescent light. I stepped inside and stood there, listening. The warehouse was silent except for the hum of the lights and the distant sound of the HVAC system. I walked down the center aisle, my footsteps echoing off the concrete floor. The lights activated ahead of me and shut off behind me, creating a moving bubble of visibility in the darkness. I reached the West Annex where Camera 7 had gone out. The area looked undisturbed, rows of shelving, pallets of restaurant supplies, everything in order. I checked the door at the far end. Locked. I was halfway back to the office when I heard the footsteps. They were coming from somewhere behind me, in the section I'd just walked through. Distinct footfalls, the sound of boots on concrete, walking, not running. I spun around, but the lights had already shut off, leaving that whole section in darkness. "Hello?" I called out. The footsteps stopped. I waited, my hand tight around the flashlight. 10 seconds passed. 20. Nothing. "Building security," I called. "If someone's in here, you need to leave now." No response. I turned on the flashlight and aimed it back toward the West Annex. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating empty aisles and stacked equipment. I walked back slowly, sweeping the light from side to side. The motion lights clicked on as I moved, but they only made the shadows deeper beyond their range. I reached the annex and checked every aisle, behind every shelving unit. Empty. Back at the security station, I watched the monitors for 20 minutes. Nothing. Camera 7 was still out, just that blue no-signal screen. I called the emergency number Patricia had given me and left a voicemail explaining the situation. Camera malfunction, possible intruder, nothing confirmed. The midnight patrol was uneventful. I walked the whole route, checked every door, found nothing out of place. By 12:45, I was back at the desk, telling myself I'd imagined the footsteps or misidentified some normal building sound. At 1:15 a.m., Camera 3 went black, then Camera 5, then Camera 9. I sat up straight, watching the monitors blink out one by one. Within 3 minutes, 6 of the 12 cameras were showing no signal. The remaining feeds showed empty warehouse, empty parking lot, empty loading docks. I picked up the desk phone to call the police. No dial tone. I pressed the receiver button several times. Dead. I pulled out my cell phone. No service. Same as before. The Wi-Fi was down too. I stood up, my heart starting to pound. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had cut the phone line, probably the internet cable too. someone who knew where to find them. I went to the front door and looked out through the glass. The parking lot was empty except for my car. The other buildings were still dark. No police cars, no security vehicles, nothing. I locked the front door deadbolt and went back to the monitors. Camera 11, one of the remaining working cameras covering the main warehouse floor, showed movement, a figure walking between the aisles. I leaned closer to the screen. It was definitely a person, moving slowly, methodically, checking the rows. Too far away and the camera resolution too poor to make out details, just a dark shape in the fluorescent light. Another figure appeared on camera 10, near the loading docks. Then another on camera 6. 3 people, inside the building, moving through the warehouse like they were searching for something. I grabbed the flashlight and turned it off, then killed the lights in the office. I sat in the dark, watching the monitors, my mouth dry, trying to think. They had to have been inside already when I'd done the previous patrols. Hiding somewhere the cameras didn't cover, or in the blind spots I'd walked past. They'd waited until I was settled in the office, then started moving. On camera 11, one of the figures stopped. They turned and looked directly at the camera, and even through the grainy feed I could see they were wearing a mask, not a ski mask, something else. A smooth, featureless face, white or cream-colored. They raised one hand and waved. Then they reached up and grabbed the camera. The feed shook violently and went black. I was alone in the dark office with 2 working cameras and 3 people somewhere in the building who knew exactly where I was. I had to get out. I moved to the front door, keeping low, and looked through the glass again. The parking lot was still empty, but now I saw something I'd missed before. My car was sitting lower on the driver's side. The front tire was flat, not flat, slashed. I could see the rubber splayed out against the pavement. I backed away from the door and looked at the remaining monitors. One figure was walking toward the office section. The other 2 had disappeared off camera. I heard a door handle rattle, not the front door. One of the doors leading from the warehouse into the office section. I moved into the break room and pulled out my phone, knowing it was useless, but trying anyway. No service. I opened the browser to see if there was any public Wi-Fi from the neighboring buildings. Nothing. The door handle rattled again, harder. Then I heard a key sliding into the lock. They had keys. The lock turned with a heavy click. The door opened, and I heard footsteps in the hallway outside the break room. Slow, measured steps, not trying to be quiet. Someone who knew I could hear them and didn't care. I pressed myself against the wall next to the break room door, the flashlight held like a club. It was a useless weapon, but it was all I had. The footsteps stopped outside the door. I could hear breathing on the other side, heavy like someone who'd been exerting themselves. The door handle started to turn. I ran. I burst out of the break room and sprinted down the hallway toward the warehouse, away from whoever was coming in. I heard shouting behind me, multiple voices, but I didn't look back. I hit the door to the warehouse at full speed and stumbled into the darkness. The motion lights clicked on. I ran down the center aisle, my boots pounding on concrete. Behind me, the door slammed open and more footsteps followed. I cut right into a section of high shelving stacked with industrial dishwashers. I ran down the narrow aisle and stopped, pressing myself against a pallet and trying to control my breathing. The lights behind me went out as the timer expired. I was in darkness now, the nearest emergency exit sign a distant red glow 50 feet away. I heard them spreading out, 3 sets of footsteps, moving through different aisles, the motion lights clicking on and off as they searched. They weren't talking to each other, weren't calling out. They just walked, systematically covering the floor. I moved deeper into the shelving, heading for the loading dock area. If I could get there, I could trigger the emergency exit and hope the alarm brought the police, or at least scared these people off. I was 20 feet from the loading dock door when someone grabbed my shoulder. I spun and swung the flashlight. It connected with something, an arm, a shoulder, and I heard a grunt of pain. I couldn't see their face clearly, just the pale mask and dark clothing. They grabbed for me again, and I kicked, catching them in the knee. They went down, and I ran for the loading dock door. It was locked. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking, trying to find the right one in the dark. Behind me, I heard the person getting up and footsteps converging from other aisles. The key slid in. I turned it and slammed the door handle down. An alarm blared, ear-splittingly loud in the enclosed space. The loading dock lights blazed on, and I saw I was in a concrete bay with 3 rolling doors and a regular exit door on the side. I ran to the exit door and pushed. It opened onto the back parking lot, and I stumbled outside into the cold night air. The alarm was still wailing. I could see lights coming on in the building next door, and in the distance I heard sirens. I ran to the front parking lot, keeping the building between me and the loading dock exit. My car was there with its slashed tire, useless. I crouched behind it and watched the warehouse entrance. The police arrived 6 minutes later, 2 patrol cars with lights flashing. I stood up and waved them down, and they pulled over. I was halfway through explaining what happened when the alarm shut off. The warehouse went silent and dark. The officers went inside with their weapons drawn. I waited in the back of one of the patrol cars, watching the entrance. They were in there for 20 minutes. When they came out, the lead officer walked over to me with a strange expression on his face. "There's no one inside," he said. "We checked the whole building. All the doors are locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry." "That's impossible," I said. "There were 3 of them. They had keys. They cut the phone lines." "Phone lines intact," he said. "We tested it. Called from inside. Worked fine." They took me back inside and showed me. All 12 cameras were working, displaying normal feeds. The phone at the security desk had a dial tone. The internet was functioning. "Maybe the system reset," I said. "But there were people in here. I saw them on the cameras. One of them grabbed me." The officer looked at my shoulder where I'd been grabbed. No marks, no bruises, nothing. They checked the loading dock door. The alarm log showed it had been triggered at 1:47 a.m. But the door itself was locked with no sign it had been opened recently. The alarm, they explained, could be triggered by the interior button without actually opening the door. "You hit the panic button," the officer said. "There's one right next to the door handle. Easy to do if you're not familiar with the layout." I looked at where he was pointing. There was indeed a red button mounted on the wall, labeled Emergency Alarm. "What about my tire?" I asked. We went outside. My car's tire was flat, but when the officer examined it, he found no slash marks, no puncture. "The valve stem was loose," he said. "Probably just worked itself free, slow leak. Happened over the course of my shift." They filed a report. They classified it as a false alarm, possible panic attack. They recommended I speak with my supervisor about additional training. I quit the next day. Patricia called me, annoyed that I was leaving them short-staffed. I tried to explain what happened, but even to my own ears it sounded ridiculous. Cameras going out then coming back on. People with keys and masks who left no trace. A cut phone line that wasn't cut. "Derek quit too," Patricia said. Same kind of story. Said he saw people in the building, but when police checked, nothing. "How many guards have quit?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. "You're the 4th in 6 months. And you didn't think to mention that?" "I thought Derek was just paranoid," she said. "The others, I don't know. Maybe the overnight shift just gets to people. It's a big empty building. Things sound different at night." I wanted to argue, but what would I say? That I'd seen people on cameras that showed nothing when the police arrived? That I'd been grabbed by someone who left no mark? That my tire had been slashed by a valve stem working itself loose? I found other work. Day shifts, places with lots of people around. I don't do security anymore. But sometimes I think about that warehouse. About Derek's face when he told me people come around sometimes. About the way he left so quickly, like he couldn't get out fast enough. And I think about Patricia's comment, 4 guards in 6 months, all with the same story. I looked up the warehouse recently, just curiosity, wanting to see if they'd finally installed better security or if it was still running the same overnight shift. The listing was still active. Night security guard needed. Minimal interaction. Overnight premium. I scrolled through the job requirements, the shift details, all the same information I'd read 6 months ago. At the bottom of the posting, there was a note in small print I hadn't noticed before. Previous applicants encouraged to reapply. I closed the browser and haven't looked since. But I still wonder who's working there now. Whether they've seen the cameras go out, whether they've heard the footsteps. whether they've felt that hand on their shoulder in the dark, and whether they've figured out yet that some buildings don't want to be empty.